Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CIL 650.
And welcome back. You're listening to Key Pacific Strata Life on CIL 650. I'm Tony Giaventi, your host. We have Dan O'Hearn from Key Pacific Management in the office. Oh, we'll start that again because we're not in the office. Feels like we're in the office. Okay, go for it.
Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CIL 650.
And welcome back to Key Pacific Strata Life on CIL 650. I'm Tony Giaventi, your host. We have the pleasure of having Dan O'Hearn from Key Pacific here in the studio tonight, as well as Gord Lee from CMW Insurance has stayed on to join us for a continued discussion to talk about some of the challenges that we have. And Dan, we have a lot of the issues we talked about earlier. We talked about the question from Sandra about the repairs as a result of a pipe that belonged to the strata that broke. But that's a really complicated problem for strata managers to deal with, isn't it?
It's always complicated. Where the pipe is located in the wall, common property, the issue of if this is below the deductible, and if you're a homeowner, I try to remind people that they're all homeowners, right? And it is by default partly their pipe too. And if they're in your home and you had a pipe leak and you had to do some repairs, then you take on that responsibility 100%, right? But it gets complicated because it's a shared pipe, or it's the corporation's responsibility to do those repairs. So all these things have to be factored in. I wish we can give a cut and dry, simple, straightforward answer.
Well, and you may not have a cut and dry, straightforward answer in the same building.
Yeah. And it's it's great. This has been a great show because we're talking about the things that frighten me the most, which is usually insurance, right? You never leave an insurance seminar feeling settled. But one thing that Gordon had talked about, and we always stress, is that people have loss assessment coverage on their homeowner's policy, and it's really concerning that you mentioned that now they're starting to cut back on these limits because we are seeing water deductibles hitting $25,000. Some buildings up to $100,000 if they have a history of this sort of thing. So that's always a concern with insurance. So people really have to take care of that. On a recent fire that we had, 10 units were affected. 2 people had insurance.
Right.
The other 8 people didn't realize that they're out of pocket,
right,
and they're trying to stay with friends or families or relatives, and it's just a mess. So, and their own they can't get to their personal items. They're locked out of the unit while it's being cleaned up, or the items are removed. So for the cost of a homeowner's insurance, you need to have it, and the tenants need to have it too.
Gord, what's a homeowner policy for a typical 2-bedroom condo cost?
You know what I would say these days, a good policy $400-500.
Right.
It's to get the bells and whistles, and people say I don't need Cadillac. I'm saying it's not Cadillac these days. You need the deductible coverage issues. You need all those covered. You need your earthquake deductible covered. You should just get all those things. $75 difference for the year. Really, can you afford not to have it? Because if that ever happened, it's sure going to look cheap. You're going to sure I wish I had it.
I don't even want to talk about earthquake insurance on the show because that's a whole other complication of discussions. We'll save that for a future show. The other challenge I think that strata corporations face, and Dan, certainly with the managers, we talk to them a lot about this, is that collecting the amount if they don't have insurance and they're responsible for a deductible, collecting the deductible amount even if they do have insurance. Some of the complications that strata corporations get through, strata can be left with paying for a lot of bills and then being the one on the hook trying to collect all the money after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the bills have got to be paid. Restoration companies have been dispatched, right? In the heat of the moment when the water's pouring down, all we're concerned about is mitigating.
Right.
You can't start a conversation of who's responsible for this. So you go out, you take care of it, and then the homeowner usually finds out after we've incurred maybe $5,000 or $6,000 worth of expenses that, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for some of this, right? And of course it's too late for them to run out and get the policy then. So I mean, I can't encourage enough that they go out and take care of it, and the tenants take care of it too. Tenants are signing on with their Form K. They're taking on some of these liabilities too.
Right.
And though you can't impose policies on people, certainly landlords that are renting out their units really should be suggesting firmly that these tenants have a policy.
But tenant policies don't cover a landlord's deductible. They
cover
cover the personal contents, their living out expenses if they need it, and liability. Right. So, yeah, a complicated problem though, right? You know, you walk through all the variables of an insurance claim that suddenly has affected 50% of the building. The workload must be excessive for the manager at the same time.
It is, and so much of it is out of our hands often, and that's why we appreciate a company like CanStar that you know, they do their best to stay on top of it, juggle lots of plates in the air to make sure that the tenants are satisfied, the homeowners are satisfied, we're satisfied. These strata corporations are looking towards us to make sure that it's done expediently. And that's why we enjoy CMW and CanStar is they understand that from our perspective, that they need to get these things done very quickly. And so you can shop around all you want for insurance renewal prices, but at the end of the day, please listen to the property manager, because we got a track record with some of the adjusters and with the insurance companies. And that, at the end of the day, when you're out of your home for 3 months rather than 3 weeks, you don't really care. You saved $1,000 on the premium.
Right.
What's important is getting the place taken care of.
Well, and when you're out buying policies too, the other thing to compare is that the policies are actually the same policies.
Yes.
You might find a policy that's a better deal, looks like on the surface is a better deal, but when you look in behind the policy, you get behind the shield and you start looking, you might find that this policy excludes a number of things that the other policies did not exclude.
Yes.
Or deductibles for some of the other conditions may be higher.
Absolutely.
So it's all, again, Gord, from your profession, it's about managing risk.
Yes.
We have an email, an interesting email actually from a strata that has a bylaw. They've adopted a bylaw. Bob sent us an email where the strata's adopted a bylaw that doesn't allow a minor under the age of 18 to be on the common property unless supervised by an adult.
Right.
Complicated problem
It's
for
a pretty broad brush stroke, isn't it?
Well, I kind of wonder if the strata didn't actually think about what they meant by common property. Right?
Yeah.
Does
well,
that,
you
know,
so this person, well, first of all, you often see this supervising, and I think Bob talks about supervised while at play, and
That's
they
right.
want to make sure they don't have balls bouncing into windows and that sort of thing, and that's understandable. But the issue is how does a person who's under 14 get from their front door to outside of the building, or their front door through the parking lot to get to school? And it's an interesting, conceptually, we would have to find out a little bit more what the council had in mind.
It's an interesting thing about drafting bylaws. I think there are insurance liabilities around it, because if Strata ends up drafting an unenforceable bylaw and gets sued, the Strata's insurer comes to play. They're there for professional liability, for directors and officers' liability to defend them. But from the Strata manager's perspective, having to manage, you pick up a new project or an old project that has a whole bunch of bylaws that are now questionably unenforceable. That has to be a pretty daunting task for the managers to address.
It is
as well.
daunting. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time on a new project just reading the bylaws, trying to understand them. You can never memorize every strata corporation's bylaws because they're all somewhat different. We certainly try to look at bylaws that probably are never revised frequently enough, and then we would propose a set of key Pacific bylaws, things that have been vetted that we think would be very good to put in place, because every year there's some bylaws that we really think should be implemented, and whether it's talking about grow-ups or quorums of meetings, and we would present that to the Strata Corporation.
Well, in insurance bylaws, you can't force someone to buy insurance for their personal risk, but there's certainly a value in telling them within the bylaws that this is for your own protection. We recommend it. As an owner, as a landlord, for your protection, having insurance to cover your personal liabilities, especially in the event where where strata corporations or strata owners are facing really large deductibles.
Yep. I think park as much as you can in the bylaws, stuff that's common sense. Find a way to work in the bylaws, because it's the one document that everyone reads before they move in.
We hope.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people have called me because they've got a dog and they're moving into a building that says no pets.
Yeah.
You know, or they bought an investment unit to retire in 10 years from now, and the building doesn't permit rentals, you know?
Yeah, and they bought a brand new place and they didn't read the disclosure statement.
Yeah, well, lots of challenges. Dan Ahern, Key Pacific Management, thank you so much. Gordon Lee from CMW Insurance. I'm Tony Gioventu, the host of Key Pacific's Strata Life. If you have any emails or questions that you'd like, send us an email at questions@strata.life. Questions@strata.life, and happy strata living.